Blackhawks upset the Oilers for their first win of the season. I'll get into the big performances from Teuvo Teravainen and Connor Bedard.
You're Locked On Blackhawks, your daily podcast on the Chicago Blackhawks, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What's going on, everyone? Welcome back to another episode of Locked On Blackhawks, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Real quick, just a reminder to please go and hit that like button, comment down below, and most importantly, subscribe to Locked On Blackhawks on YouTube. Currently on the climb to 2,000 subscribers, but can't reach that goal without your help. 100% free, won't cost you anything, and really does help me out tremendously. And got to let you all know as well that today's episode is sponsored by FanDuel. If you're not already a member with FanDuel, be sure to go and visit FanDuel.com. And when you put $5 down, you'll get $200 worth of bonus bets guaranteed with America's #1 sportsbook. All right, good afternoon, everyone. Again, thank you all for joining me on another episode of Locked On Blackhawks, your one-stop shop for all things Chicago Blackhawks. Gotta love a victory Monday, not only for our Chicago Bears, as they, of course, defeated the Jacksonville Jaguars early on Sunday morning over in London, but it's a victory Monday for our Chicago Blackhawks as well, and a much-needed victory Monday after a little bit of a heartbreaker on Friday night in Winnipeg, the second game of the season for the Blackhawks. Felt like it was a primetime opportunity for them to go and get that first win of the year out of the way, end up falling 2-1 to the Jets in overtime, and then things didn't get any easier from there, as on the back end of their weekend back-to-back, the Blackhawks had to travel to Edmonton, Alberta to take on the defending Western Conference champion Oilers, a team that was also coming off of an embarrassing 6-0 defeat in their season openers. They got waxed to the hands of the Winnipeg Jets. So it felt like could have been a little bounce-back opportunity for Connor McDavid, Leon Draisaitl in that potent Edmonton Oilers offense. But the Blackhawks came out and managed to steal 2 points away from them to get their first victory of the season in a fun game to watch. Can't remember the last time I said that about the Blackhawks. Certainly a more fun and stronger performance that we had seen in their first two performances of the year. And man, awesome to come away with a big-time 5-2 victory up in Edmonton. And what really impressed me the most before I get into my what went right for the Blackhawks, first off, was just their resiliency, because they were tested throughout the course of this game. A couple of tough penalty calls that didn't go their way as well. That's actually how Edmonton got their first goal of this game, was kind of a BS penalty call. And after a really phenomenal kill by the Blackhawks, Edmonton, seconds after the penalty expired, wound up putting the puck in the back of the net via Corey Perry, because of course, but the Blackhawks didn't let that spiral in the wrong direction. They showed their resiliency. They went back and scored the next 2 goals of the game to go up 3-1 going into the third period. And then they still didn't get complacent. They still went and tried to go and get more. They extended their lead to 4-1. And then even in the third, when the Oilers cut that deficit into 2 goals, the Blackhawks, it wasn't pretty, but they didn't give up. They managed to add one more insurance goal late via Teuvo Teravainen and wind up sealing this one 5-2. So I was really impressed with the resiliency from the Blackhawks. From start to finish. I don't know if I would necessarily call it a full 60-minute game, because, the ice was heavily tilted in the Oilers' favor in that third period, but that's generally what's going to happen when you're playing against a really good team that has some desperation there late in the third period. So for the Blackhawks to go and hold them off, hat tip to Peter Mrazek, of course, in that stopping 36 of the 38 shots that he faced to earn the victory. Big time win for the Blackhawks. But as far as what went right, how they managed to defeat the Edmonton Oilers in this game, it was because their big guns rose to the occasion. The Blackhawks got standout performances from their top line especially, but their second line chipped in offensively as well. And the top 4 defensive pairings, I thought, was as sturdy as it has been so far through the opening 3 games. So just the big guns coming to play for the Blackhawks, and quite honestly, getting the better end of the big guns for the Edmonton Oilers. I think that's why the Hawks came out of this game with 2 points. Teuvo Teravainen was the main difference maker, though, for the Blackhawks. What a game for Teuvo. Not only does he wind up with the game-winning goal, but he added another 2 goals in this game, along with 2 assists. 4-point night for Teravainen, leads the team with 6 shots on goal. He was everywhere and did a lot of good work from the right dot on the Blackhawks man advantage. Connor Bedard, absolutely sensational as well. How about that wrister, baby, for his opening goal of the season? A top shelf snipe, first little highlight of the year out of Connor Bedard. But I thought his playmaking and decision-making in this game was really sharp as well. Made some nice heads-up plays to set up Teuvo Teravainen for his first goal. Had another sweet dish later on in the game as well. So a lot of good stuff out of Connor Bedard. He's been pretty solid in these opening 3 games. Seth Jones, really good on the back end for the Hawks as well. Love to see him being aggressive and wanting to shoot the puck on the power play. And it feels like the Blackhawks man advantage, they're starting to figure out, if Connor Bedard is going to get all this attention, it's going to open up looks for other people. And those other players have to want to shoot the puck. And Seth Jones, I talked about in his season preview how important it is for him to get off to a good start to the year, to get his first power play goal out of the way. I mean, I don't think he scored his first power play goal until March of last year when he went on that little heater. So for him to kind of get that proverbial monkey off the back early on in the season, that was awesome. Also chipped in for 2 assists, 3-point game from Seth. Had 3 shots on goal, 4 block shots, and as usual, led the Blackhawks with nearly 25 minutes of time on ice. Alex Vlasic, I thought, was really good inside the top 4 as well. Had a nice assist on Teuvo Teravainen's goal to kind of put things away there late in the third. Also had 4 block shots and, racked up 23 minutes and 50 seconds of ice time. Pretty safe to say the Blackhawks coaching staff has a lot of trust in number 72 back there defensively. And then I also thought it was really crucial for the Hawks to go 3 for 3 on the power play, right? When you're going up against a really strong offensive bunch like the Oilers, all those special team goals, I mean, any can add up and really make the difference. And that is what wound up making the difference in this game. The Blackhawks were the better teams in both special teams departments, quite honestly. I was really happy with what I saw out of the Blackhawks special teams. And for the power play to find the back of the net 3 times, hopefully that's kind of the breaking of the dam that'll give this team in this man advantage some momentum going forward. And then I got to give a shout out to the second line as well. I've thought they've really moved the puck nicely through these first 3 games. Philip Kurashev, who was so due, hit the crossbar in that game against Utah in the season opener, right? Had a really nice game, I thought, as well against Winnipeg. Finally struck for his first goal of the season, fittingly on his 25th birthday. Kicked off the scoring for the Blackhawks. Taylor Hall picked up an assist in this game as well. And then, as I referenced, the top 4D for the Blackhawks. Seth Jones, Alex Vlasic, 2 of the highest game scores. I thought Alec Martinez was pretty solid as well. TJ Brody was a little ho-hum, but I thought he was better as the game progressed there in the second and third period. So the big guns coming to play for the Blackhawks, really to me is what wound up making the difference. When you get a 4-point game from Teuvo, 3-point games from Bedard and Seth Jones, Blackhawks are going to be winning a lot of those games. And for their big guns to outperform the stars from the Edmonton Oilers, I mean, that was awesome to see. Really solid performance from the Blackhawks to get their first victory of the year, and hopefully they can just keep it going before they wrap up their 4-game road trip to kick things off here this season on Tuesday night with the Calgary Flames before the home opener at the United Center on Thursday against the San Jose Sharks, with yours truly being in attendance. There are my key takeaways from the Blackhawks picking up their first win of the season. A fun game Saturday night over Edmonton. Love to see Connor Bedard getting the Hockey Night in Canada interview with the towel around his neck. Going to take a quick break here, Blackhawks fans, but when I return, I also have to talk about the Rockford IceHogs picking up a nice first victory of their season over the weekend as well. But first, real quick, I do got to talk to you all about the fine folks over at FanDuel. And to all my NFL fans out there, you can now start the season with a big return over at FanDuel, America's #1 sports book. So when you get a hunch in the middle of the game, you can go and check out the latest stats, view live play-by-play, and so much more on the same page where you also happen to place your bets. And how about our Chicago Bears? 4-2 now after a big win over the Jaguars yesterday. Got the bye week coming up, but next matchup, a huge tilt against the Washington Commanders. If you think the Bears can keep that energy going and pick up a big dub in their next game over the Commanders, make sure to go place an early wager with FanDuel. And if you're not already a member, go and create an account. And when you put $5 down with FanDuel, they'll award you $200 worth of bonus bets that you can use to bet on anything from live touchdown scores, first touchdown scores, money lines, spreads, over-unders, game props. You can bet on everything relating to our Chicago Bears. You just got to go and check out FanDuel.com. And again, if you're not already a member, $5 down will get you $200 worth of bonus bets guaranteed with America's #1 sportsbook. Back here on the Locked On Blackhawks podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Do want to say thank you again to everyone who made Locked On Blackhawks their very first listen to start off the day. Now for your second listen, make sure to go and check out the Locked On NHL podcast, where the action never ends. National expertise providing local perspective. You can easily find the link to Locked On NHL down in the description of this video, or you can simply search on YouTube or wherever you may be listening to your podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Segment 2. Not only did the Chicago Blackhawks get their first victory of the season over the weekend, but so did the Rockford IceHogs in their season opener as well. A nice 4-1 win over the Central Division rival Grand Rapids Griffins, with a couple of standout performances from a few notable prospects that we're all going to be keeping an eye on this year down in Rockford. First, Colton Dach, he was the one who kicked off the scoring for the IceHogs. I'm sure he was a little bit disappointed going back down to the AHL once again. He was outspoken about how he was coming into training camp this year, gunning for a job. He was going to give it his all. He thought he would be at the NHL level by now had he not suffered a couple of injury setbacks these last couple of years. Didn't get to really make too much of a lasting impression as the Blackhawks sent him down to Rockford pretty early, but honestly, it was going to take a Herculean effort for Colton Dach to crack the NHL roster on opening night. So nice to see him, kind of keep trying to impress here in this first game with the IceHogs. He's going to get a heck of an opportunity inside the top 6. Love to see him not only score the first goal of the game, but just playing with an aggressive mindset. It really feels like I don't want to say like the Blackhawks have taken the training wheels off of Colton Dach or anything, because he's always had a little bit of a chip on his shoulder, but it feels like it's full force ahead right now for Colton in terms of the aggressiveness. 5 shots on goal in this game, which I love to see. I've talked in the past how, Colton loves to call his own number. I think he's going to be more of a goal scorer than a playmaker at the next level, albeit I don't think he's going to be like too much of an offensive creator or anything, or someone who regularly pads the stat sheets. But I do think his primary offensive ability is going to be goal scoring, and to see him, continue to fire pucks on net. 5 shots in this season debut, clearly not shying away and doesn't have a lack of confidence in himself. But I also love to see him mixing it up. I believe he got in a fight in this game. He was aggressive all throughout the preseason, throwing a lot of hits, mixing it up in post-whistle skirmishes. Again, he just really has gotten the message that the Blackhawks gave him in the offseason, and feels like he's playing with a true power forward type of mentality, just causing havoc all over the ice, going to the dirty areas, not afraid to mix it up and whatnot. Love to see that from Colton Dach, and hopefully he kind of keeps that moving forward. Also thought Frank Nazar had a pretty solid game from what I was able to see. Wasn't able to catch the entire game because the Blackhawks were also playing, but love to see Frank Nazar using his speed and his creativity and his hockey IQ when he has open space and when he's in transition. Picked up a nice primary assist in this one, and all in all, just made some nice reads. Kevin Korchinski was the one who really had the highlight of the IceHogs season opening win, though. Coast to coast, who loves you the most, Kevin Korchinski? A beautiful end-to-end rush going from D-zone to O-zone. We got to see the wheels. We got to see the stick handling. We got to see the playmaking ability, and we got to see the confidence. And we just haven't seen that a ton out of Korchinski at the NHL level, and that's okay. He's still 19 years old against grown men, but putting him down in Rockford, that allows him, again, to build the confidence, and that's why going down to Rockford, I've said it time and time again, was it a little disappointing? Yes, but by no means was it the worst case in the entire world, because he's still going to be getting valuable experience down there, playing in all situations, And we've seen that work wonders for Alex Vlasic and some other guys over the last couple of years, right? The hope is that Kevin Korchinski will be the next one. And from what we saw in this season opener, I mean, that's exactly what we sent him down to Rockford to do, was to dominate, to control the puck, to get a little bit more confidence in his puck game and in his skills, and just get the vibes high and the belief that he can do this at the pro scene while also racking up valuable experience and learning a lot while being down there. So love to see that highlight reel type play out of Kevin Korchinski over the weekend. My boy Samuel Savoie, also got to give a shout out to number 67 for netting his first pro goal as well, the fourth and final goal for the IceHogs. And then Drew Commesso, who I'm really hoping is going to be the goalie of the future here in Chicago. Got the win, only was forced to stop 17 shots, only faced 18 shots in this one, so a nice defensive performance out of the IceHogs. Also picked up an assist. Love to see Drew Commesso wind up on the stat sheet and playing a factor on as many goals as the Grand Rapids Griffins put up on him as well in the same game. I did want to be sure to also go over the lineup that the IceHogs rolled with in their season opener, just to give all of you Blackhawks fans a little bit of perspective in terms of what kind of roles and what ice time we can be expecting from certain prospects this year. On the top line for the IceHogs, it was Landon Slaggert, Frank Nazar, and Brett Seney, which I think is a really good combination. You want Frankie Nazar playing in top line offensive situations. I'm sure he's probably going to be playing on the penalty kill as well, but love having him at the first line center spot, kind of being the head honcho of the forward group, if you will. Landon Slaggert, I think, is a good power forward to have alongside him, someone who can crash the net and shoot the puck pretty well. And then Brett Seney, who's been an effective AHL player, a veteran guy there, who can be a point per game producer for this group. I think that's a really sharp top line for Anders Sorensen there. Zach Sanford, Cole Gutman, and Colton Dock serving as the second line. And then love to see Samuel Savoie and Paul Ludwinski sticking with one another down in Rockford, man. I said a year ago when they were playing together in the preseason in 2023, like, these are two guys that just mesh really well with one another, like their games and the feistiness they play with and how they like to get involved in the dirty areas. I think they're just like a match made in heaven alongside one another. That was the case in the Blackhawks preseason and throughout training camp, and I love to see they've stuck with one another here in Rockford. Gavin Hayes on that third line as well, a prospect that I really like. Got his first professional point over the weekend as well with a primary assist. And then on the defensive side of things, Kevin Korchinski and Big Louis Crevier serving as the top defensive pairing. I do wonder if Artem Levshinov returns, if we could be seeing that Korchinski-Levshinov duo. I quite honestly expect to see that. And then Isaac Phillips and Ethan Del Mastro serving as the second defensive pairing. Feels like it could be Phillips and Crevier whenever Levshinov comes back. And quite honestly, I just still don't understand why Isaac Phillips is there. Not going to give the full spiel because I know there are a couple Mailbag Monday questions surrounding that. But yeah, those are the lines that the Rockford IceHogs rolled with in their season opening win against the Grand Rapids Griffins, I should be saying. We'll definitely keep you updated if there are any tweaks by head coach Anders Sorensen to any of the forward lines or the defensive pairings in those next couple of games. But love to see the Blackhawks get their first win of the season over the weekend. Same with the Rockford IceHogs. Hopefully both squads, NHL and AHL level, can keep that mojo going. There are my takeaways from both groups' victories over the weekend. Got one final break here to take on today's show, but don't go anywhere because when I return, it's time to get into our weekly Mailbag Monday fan segment. Segment 3, time to get into our weekly Mailbag Monday fan segment. And again, just a reminder, I know lots of you Blackhawks viewers and listeners have Blackhawks questions that you want yours truly to answer here on the show. Make sure to reach out, whether you're watching on YouTube right now, you can drop those in the comment section. If you're listening on an audio platform, feel free to DM me on any one of my social media channels. You can email lockedonblackhawks@gmail.com, or you can even hop onto the community tab of the Locked On Blackhawks YouTube channel. Love Mailbag Monday. Got a good slew of questions here today. Would love to get even more for this time next week. First question I wanted to answer comes from the Rinkside General on X, who, by the way, also does a lot of good Blackhawks-related content on YouTube and on social media. Highly recommend all of my Blackhawks viewers and listeners to go and check out the Rinkside General. The Rinkside General asked, who, if anyone, does Lukas Reichel replace on this team? an interesting question, but I really don't think it should be that hard because, listen, even if it's Craig Smith or Joey Anderson, right? We're not going to be breaking anyone's hearts. They're not future pieces or at least core pieces of this franchise moving forward in the rebuild. I mean, even Andreas Athanasiou, right? Like Lucas Reichel should have the precedent to me over him. And for Reichel to be scratched through these first 3 games, I certainly do not agree with it. I know this is a Blackhawks group that, excuse me, has played nicely in these last 2 games, and Luke Richardson alluded to that at today's practice. Like, if the team's playing well, it's hard to mix up the lineup, but at the same point in time, like, we do still got to be thinking about the future. We're not going to be a playoff team this year. I really don't think anyone expects that, and it would be very surprising if they're even in that conversation. So we do still have to be thinking about the future a little bit. And if you went out of your way to bring back Lucas Reichel this year, I just don't think this is the right thing to do off the bat to like give him confidence to bounce back. I really thought it was going to be a 1-game scratching and then get in there against Winnipeg. Hopefully he's got some extra mojo and he kind of figures it out from there. But to not be giving him the opportunity, I think is a little bit wrong. I think they could easily squeak him in over a Pat Maroon, a Craig Smith, even a Ryan Donato who's been playing well. Like, I don't want to take Donato out of the lineup, but we shouldn't be scratching Lucas Reichel night in and night out to kick off the year. So, quite honestly, anyone who is on a short-term deal that's not going to be part of the rebuild here, it really shouldn't be that hard to me. Next question comes from Luke Heinzman, who asked, curious if you think this year is a top 5 pick or bust. Looking now, there is a massive teardrop at that spot this year. Quite honestly, Luke, maybe it's a disservice by me, but I'm not really looking to the 2025 draft as of now. Like, there's just so much that can happen over the next 6 to 7 months. Am I going to be keeping up with some of the top end prospects throughout the course of the year? Yes, and I'm not going to be like completely ignoring that, but I'm not really looking at the 2025 NHL draft at this point. I don't really think the Chicago Blackhawks are either. Again, they're probably doing the same thing I am. Like, they want to be keeping up and in the know with some of these guys, but that's not the focal point of this Blackhawks team any longer, is looking at the next year's draft. And perhaps the Blackhawks, I hope they get out of the bottom 5 this year. It's going to be tough for them to do, but I do think they can achieve that goal. And quite honestly, once you get out of that, it's just kind of, and even if you are in the bottom 5, it's still kind of a luck of the draw, right? You still got to get a good result in the draft lottery. So as far as whether I think it's a top 5 pick or bust, I don't even really think that's a question for the Blackhawks right here, right now, when we're still so early into the season. There still are so many unknowns. What I will say is, from what I've been able to perceive, I guess, if you will, so far about that year's draft class, yes, it does look like there's kind of a big chunk and then a little bit of a drop-off. But quite honestly, I'm not in the know as far as that draft class like I am when the summers roll around and I'm constantly producing NHL draft coverage. So I'm personally not there yet, and I don't really think the Blackhawks are either. Next question comes from Dizzy D22277, who asked, why are the Hawks sitting Allen while Brody has had one okay game against Winnipeg and looked bad in the other 2? I think it's just $1 million question. Even without Brody, why are the Hawks sitting Allen? Why is Nolan Allen here to get sat or scratched? Isaac Phillips could easily be doing that. I just don't understand. You'd rather have Nolan Allen playing in Rockford or playing in Chicago. And sure, there are some benefits of him practicing with the team, and I'm sure watching games from up top and sticking around with Luke Richardson and some of the other coaches and watching film and whatnot and breaking down all the details and everything. But at the end of the day, you want this guy in game action. And if he's not in there against Calgary, that's another one where it's just kind of like, what are we doing here? He could be playing with Ethan Del Mastro on the second pairing in a mammoth top 4 for the IceHogs. Korchinski, Crevier, Nolan Allen, and Ethan Del Mastro, right? You're going to have Artem Levshinov there at some point. I just think it makes a lot more sense to have Isaac Phillips being healthy scratched here in Chicago than Nolan Allen. As far as TJ Brody, yeah, he's going to have to prove himself, man. It's been a little bit of a shaky start to his Blackhawks tenure. Played really solid against Winnipeg. Was definitely not as good the next night against Edmonton, but wasn't like a black hole like I thought he was in the season opener. Yeah, TJ Brody is definitely going to have impressive games to stay in the lineup, even though he is getting paid, right? Especially like if you have a guy like Nolan Allen around who should be in the lineup. If, you know, someone like TJ Brody isn't performing and Nolan Allen's around, I don't think you should be afraid to pull the veteran out and give the kid a look. Next question comes from Isaac Guerrero 8873, who asked, question for Mailbag. Who's playing better, Connor Murphy or TJ Brody? Should Murph keep mentoring young defensemen on third pairing regardless? I do think Connor Murphy's been better than TJ Brody so far, but a very small sample size. We're only 3 games into the year. But I've had my gripe about Connor Murphy the last few years as well, and I do wonder if he's even the type of guy who can service a young defenseman. We didn't see much success out of he and Kevin Korchinski last year, and even when Jake McCabe was here, that pairing didn't have a lot of success with one another. So I definitely have my concerns about Connor Murphy, but it's still so early. I'm gonna hold any true judgment, but yeah, I definitely have my concerns about both of those guys on the back end for the Blackhawks. Next question comes from Martin L945, who emailed in the podcast and said, best impression and biggest disappointment through 3 games. Best impression? Teuvo Teravainen, probably, right? Teuvo's been awesome since he's come back here, except for that boneheaded play against the Winnipeg Jets. Big time game against Edmonton, obviously, kind of gives me a little bit of bias there, but that shows you the potential that he has on the top line and with the power play. Only 3 games. It's so hard to say, but I've been really happy as well with Ryan Donato. Ryan Donato has been awesome. I really think he's made a very good impression. Alex Vlasic has been rather good. Connor Bedard, of course. How about Ryan Donato, though? Ryan Donato has been really solid, I've thought. Biggest disappointment, Tyler Bertuzzi on that second line has been doing some good things, and that second line is cycling, but for Bertuzzi to not produce more through these opening 3 games is definitely a little disappointing. TJ Brody, for the money he's getting paid, has to be disappointing. To get 2 years at $3.75 million, he's probably the one that stands out thus far to me. And then the final question I have comes from Pam Wemiser. I apologize, Pam, if I completely butchered that, but she asked best places to park for free around the United Center. This is kind of like we talk about games within the games here. This is a game within the game. Man, I'm not great with street names around the United Center, so I apologize for this. And quite honestly, if you're trying to sneak free parking, it's really hard to do around the United Center. Even when I'm going to Blackhawks practices down at Fifth Third Arena, it's hard to find free parking at 10:45 in the morning, let alone 5:30, 6 o'clock before a Blackhawks game. I honestly think the best way, and this is what I always do when I drive or when I go with one of my buddies and they drive, just park at the United Center. Just park at the United Center. It's a little bit of a pain in the butt to get in there, but getting out usually is not that bad. And then just the drive home after really isn't nearly as bad as having to deal with the traffic on the way down. You can usually get a pretty quick exit if you, I don't want to say hustle bustle out of the game, but if you're not dragging ass, you should be able to get out of the parking lot pretty easily. So honestly, the United Center parking, I knock on wood, haven't had really bad experiences there. Paying $20, $25 for parking does kind of suck considering everything's so expensive at the game, but your car is right there. It's protected. You don't have to worry about anything going on the street. And like I said, you do kind of get that easy exit. So that's probably what I would recommend, but I know there are places for free parking. You just really got to grind. I would start looking around Fifth Third Arena, though. Those are usually where the free parking spots, at least from what I've found, that's usually where they typically tend to be. All right, that's going to wrap up today's episode of Locked On Blackhawks. As always, thank you all again to everyone who joined me on the show. Feel free to go and follow me on X at Jack Bushman 2, but be sure to go and follow at Talkin' Hockey so that way you can get all of the latest Blackhawks news and updates. Be sure to go and follow Locked On Blackhawks for free wherever you may be listening to your podcast. That way you can listen to the show on the go, and then also go and subscribe to Locked On Blackhawks on YouTube so you can go and look at my pretty little face while watching the video version. God, I absolutely hate myself for saying that, but be sure to go and subscribe to Locked On Blackhawks on YouTube. Shame on me. Until the next episode, though, everyone, I will be having a preview of tomorrow's matchup with the Calgary Flames coming out. Be on the lookout for that dropping tomorrow morning. Go Hawks! Well, actually, I'll have another episode until then. So I'll talk to you on tomorrow's episode of Locked On Blackhawks, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.